Hello my friends and welcome to yet another episode of Retro Ups and Downs with me, Simon Miller, and for the frequent viewers, you're like, Simon, why the hell are you sat down? Well, it's quite hard to stand at the moment because I had to have a little bit of surgery this week, so don't worry about it. Don't worry about me. Don't cry for me, Argentina. And instead, let's go into the past and talk about old wrestling. Because we were on the highway to hell in the summer of 1998, where at SummerSlam, The Undertaker was going to take on Stone Cold Steve Austin for the WWF title. And just to let you know where I was at this juncture, I was a terrified child because I didn't really know what wrestling was at this particular time. And I was such a big Rattlesnake fan, I was like, oh my gosh, he's going to lose. To the point when he did stun The Undertaker and he won, I jumped off my seat and celebrated, which was not the best idea in the world because I told my mother I was sick that day in order to get the day off school so I could watch SummerSlam 98. I'm a fool. This also meant I was a tried and tested World Wrestling Federation fan, and even though every now and then I would flick over to WCW to see what the hell they were doing and feel guilty that I did do it, thank goodness I didn't watch whole episodes, as you are about to find out today. And that's why it will blow your mind that the August 31st, 2008 episode of Nitro was the highest rated Nitro ever with a rating of 6.01, which meant at the time in the United States of America, it was the most watched wrestling show on cable ever. And there are some caveats when it comes to that statistic as well, but the fact it's even in the conversation is mad. And a huge reason for this was that on this night, WWF Raw didn't air. But my gosh, you think somebody at World Championship Wrestling would have gone, well, we got to make this a good show, but they did not. So please do brace yourself as we take the finger of power and give the good bits up and the bad bits are down for the highest rated Nitro show ever. But if you're expecting a lot of this, I would change your opinion right now. Right, why the hell did Nitro ever go to 3 hours? I mean, obviously money, that's always the answer. But good grief, they had no plans because all they did was eke things out. Like, to start off this episode of Nitro, out comes Hulk Hogan, out comes Eric Bischoff, as we hear the NWO theme for what was going to be around about 7,000 times throughout the whole thing. And they just talk, and they just talk, and they just talk, although they don't actually say anything. And I swear they just stood on the rampway for about 3 minutes as Hulk Hogan flexed each muscle at least 42 times. And then when they did get to the squared circle, Eric Bischoff is like, man, I have a weapon in my pocket, but it's the pen, because of course he was the booker of WCW. And then Hulk Hogan, words may come out of his mouth. I was scribbling all down going, none of this makes any sense. He's talking about the upcoming War Games match and that he's not scared about the Ultimate Warrior, Warrior, we can't call him the Ultimate One. And the only reason this segment gets away with any of it is because the crowd is so lively, the crowd is so raucous, the crowd has so much energy that you do start to buy in, but then you're swiftly taken out of it again. I'm not sure what anybody was smoking back in 1998, but what is the deal behind this warrior character? It was like whenever anybody would say his name, smoke would just fill up in the ring, and he would appear for about 4 seconds, and then he'd just vanish again. And that's exactly what happened here. The rest of the NWO Black and White rushed the ring to try and stop him, but they can't do anything. So if you were a fan back at the time, why would you stay invested in this? You actually would have been better off just peeling a potato. That would have been more interesting and a more worthy use of your existence. So it has to get it down. And if you've never seen WCW before, and this was the first thing you ever did witness, you would probably be baffled about how the hell we ever had a Monday Night War. From there, we finally get into a wrestling match, and it's Roth versus Jim Powers. Now, of course, Roth used to be the former Adam Bomb, so he's getting a little bit of a push here, but for Mr. Powers, I don't think he gives two shits. Down. Powers' plan here as well seems to be the fact that he's obsessed with hitting the 10 punches in the corner, because honestly, he goes for it once, it fails. He goes for it twice, it fails. He goes for it a third time, and Roth then gets pissed off, hits that power slam maneuver thing, and he just wins. So this doesn't go longer than 3 minutes, and don't forget the opening segment went about 20, and all of this is about to get so much worse. Because the Nitro girls are out to dance for a while, and if you know, you know, and if you don't know, don't worry about it, before we get to match 2, that is Norman Smiley versus Scott Norton. Now, both of these guys do have huge chunks of their careers where they absolutely smashed it. Like, Norton was a massive success in Japan, and Norman Smiley, to this day, is an incredibly respected professional wrestler. I mean, he's been training down in NXT for ages, and everybody goes, oh my gosh, he's the best, I love him. So what was WCW's big plan here? Well, they said, let them wrestle for 120 seconds and then draw a line under it. Down. Scott just murders poor Norman as well and has him beat him on a couple of occasions, once even after a shoulder breaker. But of course he picks him off the mat all like, ha ha ha, I don't want to win the match now. Even though seconds later he hits the power bomb and then decides, oh wait, now I do want to win the match. I was like, Scott Norton, you have serious decision-making problems. You need to pick a path and you need to stick to it. And I wouldn't even say this was bad, but it's just there. And as soon as we are done, all of a sudden the lights start flickering and there's the smoke and the Warrior is just hanging out in the rafters thinking he's Sting. And I bet the WCW production crew were devastated when the Warrior did join, because they were like, yeah, throughout the night, you just got to push buttons. Like, anytime the NWO Black and White come to the ring, the Warrior's got to be there, so please just switch the lights on and off. We then go full-on sports entertainment as we are reminded that Saturn is now Lodi's slave. And these are not my words, these are the words WCW used. So they're in the back and Saturn's all like, oh, I lost a match and I promised to live up to this stipulation, so I would. And at this juncture, I realised I couldn't care less. You then get the NWO Wolfpack coming out. I'm not going to get into that split because that's going to have to be a separate video for a separate day. And we get Kevin Nash and we get Konnan and we get Lex Luger. Now, Lex Luger is an interesting cat to begin with, but here in the late 90s, someone has told him, hey Lex, you should try and be really cool out there. And some of the verbiage that comes out of his mouth, I think I actually wanted to die. Much like Roddy Piper and Steve Austin just did. I mean, he just comes across like such a dork here. However, he does confirm that the main event of the evening is going to be Hulk Hogan and Bret the Hitman Hart taking on himself and Sting, which is quite exciting. And then Kevin Nash on the microphone is like, oh man, I'm so cool right now. And here's who I'm going to team up with for War Games. Then he talks about the Ultimate Warrior for about an hour and just runs him down. Again, this just went so damn long and I wanted it to end. Down. This is especially true because you go from one talking segment to a next talking segment, as I just wanted some wrestling. And this time it's JJ Dillon saying, oh my gosh, I want Arn Anderson to come to the ring, which was ridiculous because Arn Anderson had been written off television 2 weeks later, but then WCW management got bored and said, let's just bring it back. You do get some cool footage of Arn Anderson cutting a promo from when he started in his career, and I quite like that because it's like, oh my gosh, nostalgia. And the whole point is JJ Dillon wants Arn Anderson to reform the Four Horsemen alongside Ric Flair, Steve Mongo McMichael and Chris Benoit, with the latter two coming to the ring and being all like, yeah, Arn, we should do this. And Arn turns and just goes, nope. And look, down the line, this was going to end with a really cool segment, but once again, this just goes on forever. I think this was the first hour of Nitro and nothing had happened. And I was like, man, one day I'm going to be dead. One day I'm going to be on deathbed and I'm never going to be able to get that time back. Oh, it made my want to brain melt. That was even worse. Look what it's doing to my grammar. It made my brain want to melt, and let's get it down. Eddie Guerrero, thankfully, is then on Nitro. Sadly, he has to fight Brian Adams, and this was the time when he was embroiled with all this Eric Bischoff stuff. So I'm just going to give it to you straight. This ain't very good either. Because Adams is in the black and white NWO 2, all of a sudden the lights are going off and on again. So Steve in production is probably like, man, I'm so bored of doing this, I don't want to do it anymore. And the first thing Eddie Guerrero does is just lie down on the mat. Because he doesn't want to work for Eric Bischoff anymore, and therefore, he's not going to work any proper wrestling matches. For some reason, Brian Adams doesn't just want to pin him, which anybody in their right of mind would done, so he throws him around for a little bit, but then gets bored and goes, I'm going to pin you anyway. And afterwards, Eddie Guerrero goes, see, I did what you wanted me to, Mr. Bischoff, so now you can't sue me, which I think was a Ric Flair reference, but I'll be honest with you, it was really hard to care. It's also just so obtuse and kind of walks that fine line of, oh, wrestling's real and wrestling is not real. And also, this is Eddie Guerrero, one of the best wrestlers of all time. Here he is in my hand. And this is all you could come up to do with him? Just makes you want to do that over and over, which you shouldn't do because it will hurt your face. Let's get it down. And it's a down for Ernest Miller versus Scottie Riggs. How did WCW win for so long? Once again, we're done in about 2 minutes. And don't get me wrong, I like Ernest the Cat Miller. He was quite entertaining, but he just kicks Scottie Riggs, who wasn't even allowed an entrance song because he was part of Raven's flock, and he beats him. Then he cuts a promo saying, oh my gosh, I'm so beautiful. And there is nothing here. There's nothing here. I have more hair on my head in terms of substance to whatever the hell this was. I then freaked out because it was Marty Jannetty versus Konnan. I was like, how in 1998 did we have a match on worldwide television that was Marty Jannetty versus Konnan? Somehow these two were able to wrangle 10 minutes out of WCW executives as well, and while on paper it may sound alright, this is not the Marty Jannetty you remember, and this is the Marty Jannetty that clearly was struggling to find his place in the world, especially when it came to stepping foot in a wrestling ring. So it makes you feel a little bit sad in your tum-tum, although fair play to Konnan, he is over like Rover here, because of course he is in the NWO Wolfpack, but he just beats Marty Jannetty up. Then he hits the Konnan factor, which was just the X factor. Then he locks in the Tequila Sunrise. Marty Jannetty taps out. And I kind of thought to myself, well, that was fine. I don't mind that it did exist, but what did I get out of it? And once again, the answer is nothing. So I tried to like this. I really tried. I sat there and I went, ugh, but it didn't work because you just can't. Which is why it has to get it down. More nonsense with Saturn and Lodi next. As it turns out, Saturn now has to carry signs, and because of course Lodi was in Raven's flock, Raven is there just pushing everyone's buttons, but before Saturn rips his head off, Lodi goes, no, don't do it. I don't know, friend of mine, he wasn't his friend, employee, I suppose. And that was that. It also leads into a tag match where the big question is, how are these two going to coexist? And I just looked in the corner like I'm doing now, and I said, please somebody give me strength, because I still have 90 minutes to go. High Voltage were the opponents, and you already know the story here. Anytime Saturn was up on the whole thing, Lodi would demand a tag, and Saturn would give it to him. And I was like, why would you do this? I understand that you're his slave, but wouldn't you at least try and stand on your own 2 feet when you're in the wrestling ring? The answer was no. The crowd is just dead here too, because who could actually give a flub about this? And then Saturn hits the DVD, Lodi tags himself in, he gets the pin, and I honestly don't care how this story ends, even though I already knew because I watched it back in the day. Down. Next out is Diamond Dallas Page, and thank Flubblesticks for that, because this guy was just a rocking ball of energy, and he even got me pumped up like 20 odd years later, so he's getting up. He's just so excited talking to Tony Schiavone about that he is going to be representing Team WCW at War Games, when all of a sudden, he is interrupted by Roddy Piper. I mean, not that version, but you take my point. Now, Piper was the WCW GM in 1998, because in the late 90s, you just had to have one of those. And do you know what he spent the majority of his time doing? Talking about Bret Hart, while DDP just existed in the corner. I mean, he may as well have been a ghost. I think the Giant felt the same way about this too, because he ran out to attack both guys. But because of that, he gets arrested by the police. And nobody else that does any jumping gets arrested by the police, but for some reason when it comes to Paul White, the cops went, nah, you ain't allowed to do it. So no, this is not good either, but I'm standing by that up simply because Diamond Dallas Page brought so much energy to proceedings, and it's a good thing to take away if you are an upcoming wrestler. Sometimes you can just be super positive, and it works. What is the deal with this show though? Because we finally enter the last hour of the thing, and it's straight to another talking segment. It's like, could you at least put a tiny match in between them? Why does it have to go talking segment, talking segment, talking segment match, talking segment, talking segment, talking segment match? Down. It's also centered around the fact that Scott Steiner was pretending to have an injury, so he got a bunch of faux doctors to diagnose him. And I'm sorry, to be completely frank with you, this is offensive. I mean, the first one is Dr. Cecil V. Schwartz, and I was like, oh man, I'm never gonna be able to get through this, which was especially true when we get to Doctor number 2, which is Dr. Juju Ubangi. Although it's not Dr. Juju Ubangi, I hate even saying this, so screw you, WCW, but it's Buff Bagwell dressed up. And like I say, it is insulting. And I get it, yes, it's a different time, fine, but that doesn't stop it from being very wrong, especially when he uses his magic voodoo powers in order to fix Scott Steiner. This is what I did. What you're seeing right now is what I did when watching this segment. I just held my face and I shook my head. Because one, it's not even entertaining, and two, it should never have made it out of the writer's room. Then I thought about decapitating myself at this stage because it was so bad, especially when Buff Bagwell went, see, Buff's got the stuff. And of course, this was all leading into a Scott Steiner versus Rick Steiner program. So Rick Steiner comes out, he tries to beat them up, he isn't able to, so he cuts a promo, and I was like, I wonder at this stage if Rick knew he was going to give birth to a boy named Bron Breakker, and I imagine the answer was no. But yes, this is shit. More Warrior stuff as once again we just go nuts with switches, and he must have thought he was Batman at this stage, because we even get the Warrior logo in the sky. And then thankfully we got to the cruiserweight division. If you know anything about WCW, when you get to the cruiserweights, they'd always deliver. It was also champion Juventud Guerrero taking on Evan Karagias. And as Evan has come up again here on Retro Ups and Downs, when he made his debut, I called him Evan Karagias or something. It was a joke. Like, I did watch WCW back in the day. Also, he has courageous written on his ass, but some people are like, Simon, you don't even know his name. So no more jokes. You don't get any more jokes. And it was a stupid pun to begin with. However, this was quite good. Now, it is a shame that the crowd doesn't care about this at all, although after I did some digging and after I did some reading, this is because there were some women in the audience who during this decided that they would try and show their breasts. So every other single person just looked away to hopefully see some flesh. WCW in 1998 is just a very, very strange beast. But with the brain, Heenan also has no idea what to make of Evan Karagias, because at one point he's saying, oh man, that guy's going to be a super duper star because he's ripped, but then later on he's just getting on his case for never making a pin, and somewhere I bet William Regal was like, he's right. Guerrero also hurts his knee at one point, and while Karagias kind of works it over, he also kind of doesn't, so why we inserted that into the mix, I don't know. And eventually Guerrero hits the Hoovy driver, he gets the 1, 2, 3, and like I say, all of this was fine. It was just a very well-worked match, and almost like WCW should have done more than this. I think at this stage, WCW then realized, oh no, we haven't booked any wrestling matches, because we go straight into Chris Jericho, who was the television champion, taking on Disco Inferno. Now, while 50% of what I just said means you're going to have a good match, the other 50% means it's getting it down. Because yes, we all know that Chris Jericho is great. He's proven that time and time again, even into his 50s. But Disco Inferno was a really strange cat. Like, one, he had decided to be successful in wrestling. I should pretend I'm a dancer from the 70s. But also, two, well, just go listen to him on any podcast that he does now. He is a very, very strange chap, and he was a very, very strange wrestler. His finish was also called the Chart Buster, which I had forgotten, so that was the end for me. I was laughing my ass off because it was so ridiculous. And after he hits this, he must take around about 54 years to make the pin. So Chris Jericho kicks out, he gets him in the Lion Tamer, Disco Inferno taps out, this is nothing, down. And remember what I just said about the matches? WCW then does it again because they go, oh my gosh, Goldberg is a WCW champion. Maybe he should have a match too. Although again, with no competition from Monday Night Raw, they put him against Al Green. And I don't mean the singer, but still somewhat surprisingly up. Kevin Nash also returns here to be on commentary because of course soon he was going to beat Goldberg, and we'll talk about that at some point. But here is the thing with Bill in the late 90s. You knew what to expect. He was going to get in there, he was going to blow smoke out of his nose, and he was just going to run through falls. And even here in 2021, it is just so damn entertaining. And I mean, this isn't even one of the best of them, but when he does hit the spear and finishes him off with the jackhammer, the crowd are absolutely losing their minds, and I was too. And I understand I'm biased because I'm Goldberg's son, but you could kind of suspend your disbelief here. Mostly because half the time Bill Goldberg was just hitting people. It's fun though, and really it's the best booking that any wrestler could ask for. Oh, by the way, Bill, you're just gonna beat everyone? Which absolutely beggars belief why WWE didn't do this in 2003. That was 18 years ago. I ain't gonna worry about it now. I got real problems like life. Which brings us to the main event of our evening, which announcer Michael Buffer calls a dream match of professional wrestling. And I sat there and I thought about this for ages. I'm like, is Sting and Lex Luger versus Hulk Hogan and Bret Hart a dream match? And I'm sorry, but it's really not. It also just comes at a time where all of these guys seem to be out of it. Like Hulk Hogan was in Hulk Hogan mode where he never really cared. Bret Hart definitely did not care. Lex Luger was Lex Luger and was always kind of half in and half out. Whereas Sting, I think, realized he had a very glass ceiling that he was never gonna smash. He was just going to do whatever he could. The Hitman is as awesome as ever, because as soon as Lex Luger tags in Sting, he does the whole, oh my gosh, I'm really scared of the Stinger. And while this does lead to a brief standoff between Hulk Hogan and Sting, that just gave me flashbacks to 1997. And I never want to have flashbacks to 1997. Bret is also wonderful as a heel too, as he just ignores the ref going, I can't hear you, as he does the count to 5 after choking Luger. And this is just yet another example that Bret the Hitman Hart is probably actually the best wrestler ever. Because his stuff doesn't age. You can pick any match from whenever the hell he debuted in the late 80s to all the way up to, 2001 or whatever it was, and you will get some good out of it. Everything is just so sweet and everything is just so damn believable. Eventually the tag klaxon sounds and everybody gets in the ring, and there's this really strange bit with the Disciple where I think he's meant to pull Hulk Hogan out the way of the Stinger Splash. He forgets, so they just run the spot again. Hogan then starts whipping Sting with his belt before Bret Hart takes it off him and says, no, we said we weren't going to do it like that. But because they both leave the ring and get into an argument in the R way, they seemingly forget that they're in a match and they both get counted out. So that's how this dream match ended, much to the chagrin of Stone Cold Steve Austin. This is mostly done to trigger a big schmoz so the Ultimate Warrior could turn back up with all the smoke, but all he does is go, Hulk Hogan, we can all smell your fear. And then he vanishes again. And I wanted to take my fist and just go, because nothing progresses here. We don't move forward at all. We just go round and round and round and round. You do get to see him beat his chest as Nitro goes off air, but this is a terrible show. This is a terrible show. And I never want to watch it again. And I hate the fact I had to watch it the first time, and not only the main event get it down, but overall, you know what? The show's gonna get a brown down. Put it on the damn worst show ever board, or whatever we called it to. Don't watch this. Don't think, oh, well, Simon found it funny. It's not funny. It's awful. It's like going to a funeral. Do you find any humor from seeing dead people? No, you don't. This crap. Now, please do leave a comment below and let us know what other shows we should review in the future. We're always keeping an eye on it, and if something does get upvoted loads, we'll absolutely do it. Like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Head over to whatculture.com where you can keep up to date with all the latest wrestling news. Make sure you come follow us on social media. And again, there's loads of retro videos. Go find your favorite event and see what I think. My name is Simon What Culture. Thank you for indulging me as I do sit down, which I will do for the next few days, but then I'll be back on my feet, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon.